those of you who got an invite, welcome to Nerd Prom.
No matter where in the world you are, we're all Nerds International. With the hyphen. Nerds International proudly presents.
We want to take you on a quest for knowledge. One that will take us from ancient medieval fantasy across the far reaches of space to the distant future. To many savage worlds.
Welcome to episode 46 of the Wild Eye Podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to pinnacle entertainment, savage worlds, aimed at beginners and veterans alike. What's going on, gentlemen? It's been a couple of weeks. You're all looking svelte, looking sexy.
Oh, come on.
We miss you, Gary. Yeah.
I got a kiss blown at me from the German. What am I getting from England?
Nothing. You know what? I think that you don't miss us because I think that you're too busy with your ICRPG pals.
How dare you? What have you guys been up to? What's been happening?
It was just NivCon last weekend that you missed, unfortunately.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the news. The news is incoming. Prepare yourself for the news. News! And some announcements about the Nerds International Network and the Wild Eye Podcast.
Right, so, recently, NivCon happened, didn't it, Eric? Did you have fun? Was it nice?
It sure did, and I did have fun. I got to play with a lot of new people. I got to play with my hero, Mr. Pure Mongrel, a.k.a. Paris Conte. It was like in the middle of the night for him. We played some Savage Shadowrun, ran by Manuel right here on this show, the one and only. So, yeah, that was fun. I got to play that, and then later I got to try out Fiasco, ran by our friend Nick Lamslice, former co-host of this show. I wanted to play this game for a long time. I heard a lot of good things about it, and I was not disappointed. Harrison played that game, so...
Yeah, I quite enjoyed that, but I can't say that on this show because it wasn't Savage Worlds, so it was rubbish. However, you also played a bit of Wise Guys, didn't you? Good fun?
Yeah, I ran a play test the next day. That's the only game I ran. I had a full crew, and it was a lot of fun. Guys got into it and laughed the whole time, and yeah.
Yeah, and you had a little wandering hobo in that game, didn't you?
Absolutely. Thank you, Harrison, for
right. So,
wanting to steal the spotlight wherever you are, even if you're not there. You have to steal the show.
Basically, they left their game open, obviously, so that people could come in and listen. And like 2 times throughout the game, they were just midway through speaking, and I just came in, I left my microphone on, and just went, "A hobo enters the scene. Hello." And then right at the end,
it didn't make sense.
Right at the end, they were wrapping up their game, and I just came in, and they were like, "Okay, yeah, I think my character, he goes off into the sunset," and then I was like, "Yeah," and the hobo finds a lottery ticket, and he becomes the richest man in Vegas. It was so stupid. But Manuel, how did your Savage Shadowrun go? You haven't GM'd that in a while. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, well, I'm GMing a regular game with some co-workers, so I'm not really out of practice GMing. But yeah, I actually haven't run Savage Shadowrun for quite a while, and it was really fun. It was very refreshing to return back to it. I might pick up work on it to finally get a release version of it out over the next few months. And the game itself was a lot of fun. The guys I got to play with were an awesome crew, and basically if there was any fault with that game, the fault was mine, because I suck at putting together one shots, and I really need to work on that, and I will. And I got some amazing feedback mostly from Paris. So thank you, mate. And I don't know why I just saluted the camera, because nobody's ever going to see it. But now you know I saluted the camera, Paris. So there.
Paris, I salute you. But no, I mean, I haven't played a lot of Shadowrun back in the day. I can say that it does feel like you're playing Shadowrun, just with probably easier mechanics, more streamlined mechanics. So for that, I say well done, my friend. What about you, Harrison?
What
a couple of canceled games, but you got to play in a few games, right?
No, I only ended up playing Fiasco, sadly. But
That's it.
I was going to play in Gartar 2, but unfortunately Gary had to work, so instead I ended up just crying by myself. I was going to play in something else. I can't remember what it was before Fiasco, but I ended up doing a live Q&A for my other podcast instead, which was good fun. And we had a couple of people turn up. We had some discussions. We discussed ghost stories, because whenever we do Q&As, we do it not about RPGs, so we discuss ghost stories. And it turns out one of our listeners had a real ghost story that was absolutely terrifying, so that was good. We're going to be releasing that soon. So yeah.
Cool.
We did that instead of playing RPGs. When we were going to be playing Gartar, we were talking about ghost stories, and I actually got scared. But yeah, Fiasco was good, so hopefully we'll be playing Gartar 2 soon, Gary, yes?
Yes. Yeah, a couple things. I'm a little crushed that I'm no longer your hero, Eric. So, that. And yeah, you weren't the only one crying. I think we were like simultaneously crying tears from across the pond.
If you missed that, we plan on hosting another NivCon in the near future. So I know we got to meet a lot is relative because it was still a small con, but I got to meet a lot of people that listen to the Wild Eye or other shows from Nerds International, and that's my best part of that weekend, is meeting a bunch of new people or playing with some people I'd never played with, like Paris, and it was John the next day for Wise Guys, and Todd and Jason, all these guys. That was fun. James too. My first game with James of the Tabletop Twats. So awesome.
As the listeners will no doubt recall, we have been we've been running a Goblin Song competition to win a hardcover colour copy of Saga of the Goblin Horde, which is well, let's not split hairs here. It's the best setting for Savage Worlds ever, and that's a scientific fact. We've had it proved in a lab by scientists. And that's a fact. So, first, what we asked you to do was send us in your Goblin lyrics, and I would make them into a song. First prize wins that book. Second prize wins $10 gift certificate for Drive Through RPG. Third prize just wins the song, right? But all three will get made into a song, but third prize just doesn't get an additional prize. That's basically how it works. Well, we've picked the winners. They're all in. It's been done, and we're going to play them now.
And they're so funny.
I don't know about that.
What happened? Yeah, I mean, they're really funny. I love them all. I think maybe we could have just voted according to this. You should have made all 9 songs, and then we would have voted according to the songs actually sang and all that. But we had a hard time picking a winner out of the 3. So what we're going to do is we're just going to play these, and then we're going to roll randomly for number 1, number 2, and number 3. So yeah, randomly with die roll, but we're going to play them.
All right, Gary, if you could play number 1, please.
Insert cocky rap intro here.
Heads, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. These trophies we take from our fallen foes.
We decorate our armor, our weapons and our clothes with heads, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes.
Heads, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. These trophies we take from our fallen foes. Heads, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. These trophies we take from our fallen foes.
Yeah!
You know that sound at the end that sounds like a keyboard choir sound? That's actually me singing.
That's really funny.
So, yeah. All right, let's do entry. Wait, who was that one by?
That was from Ronnie Walton.
Ronnie Walton. So well done for that one, mate. So that, I guess, revolves around goblins making jewellery out of people they kill. So, play entry number 2. Yeah, this is Smoke on the Black Tier. Respect to all my goblins. We all came out to Darkmire. Where's that? On the Black Tier Lake shoreline. Alright. To make camp with a tribe gang. Yeah. We didn't have all that much time. None. Frank Zappa and the humans. We're at the best place around. But some stupid with a bolt spell. What did he do? Burn the place to the ground. What a dick. Smoke on the Black Tier. Yeah. Fire in the sky. Oh no. Smoke on the Black Tier. What? Fire in the sky. Oh no. Yeah. Smoke on the Black Tier. Okay, so that was entry number 2. Who was that by?
That was by Nicholas Magnuson. Thank you, Nicholas.
Yes, that one was good. I liked that one. I found it was very atmospheric, so that's why I had to do a sort of emotional hip-hop song for it.
Very emotional. That's why you came in from behind there and you're like, what a dick.
And I forgot to say, you should really turn up. If you're in your car, just turn up the volume, especially for the third one. That one really hits you hard.
Yeah,
like a ton of bricks.
Speaking of emotional, this next one, if you get triggered easily, goodness me, just get some tissues at the ready, because this one's going to be hard to listen to.
You ready?
Yeah.
Song number 3.
What the hell are these lyrics, man? I can't do anything with it. Just quit your moaning and do the goddamn lyrics that the record company sent, or you're going to be fired. No, I don't want to. Okay. Yeah, all right, I'll do it.
Get on with it.
Can you put a bit more volume on the beat, please, in my headphones? Go, 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 go. No, claw, bite, shite, wobble, gobble, go, go, goggle, gobble the goggle. Yeah. Go, 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 go. No, claw, bite, shite. Wobble, gobble, go, go. Goggle, gobble, gobble the goggle. Yeah. What time? Shout out the go. Yeah. Your mom, cuz. Your mom. Okay. Shout out. Just powerful stuff.
What the hell? Oh my god.
Oh, I love that one. That one was from Konrad Erasmus Neubert. So,
just
another.
I'm worried about him.
Another. Yeah. Well, I'm worried about you too, about turning this into total gangster.
What am I supposed to do with that, man? What am I supposed to do? But those are the top 3 that we picked. As you can see, the standard. I mean, imagine what was below that. Anyway, what I'm going to do now, I've got a D3 dice roller on my phone. I'm going to roll to see which one wins. And top one, I can prove it. Look at my phone right here, guys. The top one.
Number 3.
It was gulp, 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 claw, claw, that one. So, Conrad, you've won the book. Well done, mate.
Congratulations. What about number 2?
That would be the first one. So that is Heads, Shoulders, Knees and Toes.
By Ronnie Walton.
So well done, Ronnie. You're the man. And as for what that means, that number 2, you've just won That Bad Song. So congratulations, I guess.
Yeah, thanks everybody for sending in your entries. It's always fun for us to read that, even if it was kind of bad this time. But I think we asked for it with writing songs. But the end result, I mean, Harrison.
Yeah, I know I did a lot of complaining, but I certainly had a good time making them. So it was really fun. And I think the end result was really, really fun. So yeah, cheers guys, much appreciated. And I think we had a deserving winner of the 2 prizes there. So yeah, good times.
Have you requested a raise from the boss yet for those 3 songs?
I think if anything, I should be paid less. I think I should be giving Eric money to be on this show.
You know, the funny part is I read the lyrics to all of them when they came in as they were coming in. But the reason that we could never vote on them as the show hosts and we have to roll randomly is because we wouldn't really be voting on the song lyrics. We'd be voting on which one we like the best, because I would have chosen number 2 because I just like the guy in the background popping up all the time saying his stupid little retorts. That would have been my favorite one. But then again, like I said, it would have just been us voting on which one of your songs was the greatest.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Because realistically, all the lyrics were actually kind of rubbish.
The songs were really good.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
That's awesome.
They were.
Deserve a raise for that. Just saying. Here, Eric.
Yeah, Eric.
Yeah.
Listen to Gary.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Cheers. All right.
So
awkward. So right. Next up, what we got, Eric?
Well, it is a plug, and we're going to talk about recycling, and I'll explain in just a minute.
The podcast log.
For the plug, I wanted to talk about recycling, and what I mean by that is, well, just like I was explaining to the guys earlier, I started buying books again, a lot of them. Well, my standards anyway, but I've got a bookshelf, and that's where I put my books, but now it's starting to get really cool. Yeah. I used to put them in boxes, but now I got a bookshelf, right? How fancy is that?
That's right, yeah.
You think you're king of the castle with your fancy bookshelf.
Wow.
Living the life. So, yeah, that bookshelf is pretty much full right now, so I'm just stacking the new books in there, and it bothers me. So I was looking at all this stuff I got in there, and there's some stuff that I haven't touched in over 20 years that I don't play anymore, but I still have fond memories of, like all my Middle-earth role-playing games and Rollmaster, and I've got some old White Wolf in there too, and all kinds of stuff. And then I'm like, I found this book, this game RPG I used to play called Bloodlust, and it's a French RPG, and we had a lot of fun with that game. But looking at it, it's like the system is a bit dated, not really streamlined, and like I was telling them, plus it's in French, and I play only in English now, so I would have to translate the whole thing. Not worth it. So how do you use old stuff on your bookshelf and recycle them for Savage Worlds, right? Because it's a good game. Why let it go to waste? And then I was reminded of, well, one of our patrons, David Maurice Garrett, who does exactly that. I mean, I'll have a link to his blog, but he takes like old D&D modules and just adapts them to Savage Worlds, and that way old stuff that he might not have used anymore, he uses them. So that's what we're going to do. We each picked something, and we're going to discuss it, why and how we would do it, the mechanics, the rules, and all that stuff. So that's basically it. Because I'm sure a lot of listeners are in the same boat as us. I mean, of course, there's probably people that just started playing RPGs recently in the past few years, but pretty sure a large portion of them have actually been gaming for 10, 20, 30, and maybe in some case 40 years. So you've got a lot of material in there, and if you're a pack rat like me, then you don't get rid of anything, and you end up with old stuff that just collect dusts. But a lot of that material is pretty good.
Well, I think it's a great idea. I mean, a lot of us have all this old stuff that we wanted to play, but then you look back at the system and you're like, I'm never going to play that. So yeah, Eric, you're up first. Well, you're bringing Bloodlust, right?
Yeah, so Bloodlust, that's a sword and sorcery setting, so in the veins of Conan, that type of thing. But of course, on the cover, first edition, it's Frazetta's Death Dealer, which grabbed me I didn't actually grab the book. The book grabbed me when I went to the store many years ago to buy this. This was published in 1991. And so you've got this kind of medieval, of course, technology level. Probably the highest are armor and crossbow for technology in there. You got different not races, but human cultures. So from black hunters to Arab that cultivate spices, so they're like in the movie Dune. Then you've got savages, Vikings, all kinds of thing that you can easily just handle with Savage Worlds, right? But the part where it's different from your usual game is the modes of playing this game. So usually RPGs, you play the main character, but in this setting you can have, every character has a god weapon. So it's like a magical weapon, but there's actually a god living inside that weapon with its own desires, its own motivations. So it's a strong personality that you have to deal with. And those weapons, of course, have powers, which takes you basically to almost like a superpowers kind of level. You become quite powerful with that, but you also have to, you might not want to kill someone in the game. Your character doesn't want to kill someone, but your weapon does, and then you enter into some type of conflict with your god weapon, and you have to roll, and if you fail it, your weapon takes control of you. So you have different modes where you will play both. You will play both the character and the weapon, but they also say, why not have someone play a character and someone plays a weapon? So obviously you need an even number of players to do that. So the first question I have for you guys is, let's say we were going to play this, and I was going to say, all right, so half of you are going to play characters and half of you would play a weapon, a god weapon. Is that something, because I know when we played it, we didn't like that part. Nobody wanted to play a weapon, but what about you guys? Is that something you would find appealing or challenging as part of role-playing, to play a god weapon?
Yeah, I probably would, but over the course of a long campaign, wouldn't that get kind of boring?
I think that's what we figured and why we didn't really do it.
Do you get to do it? Do you get to do anything, or are you just like a pair of scissors, just like, hey, what are you gonna do? You gotta go over here. You don't get to. It just sounds like kind of boring.
Well, I mean, if your character is sleeping and someone sneaks up on them trying to kill him, the weapon is actually conscious of what's going on and can take control of the character in some ways. The weapon can actually have its own fighting skill. So the character itself might not be a warrior at all, but the weapon might have, some good fighting skill and could fight on its own. So
that sounds like a one-way ticket to arguing between players.
Yeah.
It'd be like, you got my character killed.
I don't think you actually play a weapon, though, do you? What happens is you just go into some kind of internal struggle with your conscious mind or your subconscious mind versus the conscious mind of this weapon, and it's just one of those, like old school D&D used to do that with cursed weapons all the time, and it's all it really does is just influence your actions, doesn't it?
Yeah, I get that, but then if you're playing the weapon that's associated with a character in the game, then it's just going to be essentially two players controlling one character, and all they're going to do is argue about what they wanted to happen to that character. It would be awful.
Yeah.
No way. I would never.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it too. And I mean, at some point, the more powerful the weapon becomes, there's something where they can fuse together, and some souls might be lost in the process, or just like a perfect fusion called a possessed. And when you're possessed, you don't have that duality anymore. It's just one character. But something that they did not bring up in the book that I thought would be interesting is that if everybody plays both a character and a weapon, but they don't play their own weapon, like Harrison could play his own character, but the weapon he wields is played by Gary. So then you have like a circle there where, but then again, why it's arguing about what's gonna happen, right? That sounds like a lot of arguments.
If everyone's in that kind of conflict, then it could be quite fun. But then it kind of creates a situation where it's not that believable, because you have a whole party of people where nobody just has a regular bloody sword.
Yeah, right. But isn't that the premise of the game, that everybody is like that? Every player character is like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's some sessions where you begin without a weapon, and then it's part of the scenario to find your weapon and all that. But yeah, basically everybody becomes a wielder.
Okay.
It kind of sounds like we're getting to the nuts and bolts as to why you never play this game, because it's shady as hell.
Yeah,
right?
I can't agree with Gary a little bit.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're going to sit down at a table and you're going to play a game where you have your character designed. You're playing your character. I'm, Joe Blow from Wisconsin kind of a thing, and I find this god sword. And all of a sudden, I'm in conflict with this thing, and it's continually trying to control my actions. It takes away from my character's, I think the word's autonomy. You know what I mean? Or like
agency.
Yeah, my agency. All of a sudden, I'm no longer my character. I always have Harrison looking over my shoulder, going, "Do this, mate. You want to stab him?"
This might be going against the spirit of the game, pun intended. But what I might do if I were playing this is I might have these weapons like exist, but have them be NPCs, and just have it so that it's like, okay, you have to do a spirit roll, or this thing's gonna make you do this. I mean, it's probably against the spirit of the game. I've never played it, I don't know it, but in DCC, which I play a lot, they have weapons like this, like in D&D with chaos weapons and stuff like this, where they'll have a will of their own, and they'll tell you to do stuff. You listen to my MP, Gary, where it's like the thing was just like, I want you to kill that fool, and then you have to roll a will save, and if you fail, it'll be it's something like this. So in Savage Worlds, if I was doing something like that, I might have this thing kind of, just roll a spirit check, or the DM's going to be like, this thing is strongly suggesting that you go and steal this guy's watermelon.
Well, that's how they present it in the book, by saying if the GM and the players can come to an agreement, obviously you just role play it. But if there's a conflict, then there's some called a control roll. And that's one aspect that I wanted to ask you guys about. And Harrison already said it, a spirit roll, but also, I haven't really played with it, but I know Deadlands as a Dominion mechanics for when someone is harrowed and the demon in them wants to take control. So that would be something to look into as well, because in the game there's in Bloodlust there's 5 moons, and all those moons influence your desires, because you've got prestige, wealth, sex, violence, and reputation, and all these dictate pretty much your role playing and how your god weapon likes certain things. And interestingly for Gary, I'm sure he'll find that very interesting, is that these weapons, some of their powers might be that they can have sexual organs. Would you like that, Gary? Have a mighty sword with a giant penis attached to the pommel?
I'll be honest.
sure-
Now I'm starting to like this game.
Gary's speechless. That's something too that, I mean, we were teenagers back then and we just thought that was too weird, but it makes sense in the context that they're godlike creatures living in that, and they have desires. Some of them have absolutely zero sexual desires, but some of them do. And then if they don't have an sexual organ,
So you're
how do
telling me
you do
that you've got these warriors that roll up into a town, right? And they've got like a big wang sword. And
Yeah.
But wouldn't you just be the target of every single person in that town? Not like, I'm not saying they would attack you, but I'm saying wouldn't every single person in that town be like, what on earth are you doing?
Basically, yeah, that's how I look at it.
This game, man, this game sounds nuts. And I mean, again, pun intended.
I know, right? Yeah, definitely. So, go ahead, Gary.
I was just gonna say, it's funny because you know, like, this is the reason that you don't want to do this kind of stuff, because when you're taking away the deal from the characters, all of a sudden I can see myself sitting at the table, and you're like, your sword wants you to go have sex with that man. I'll do my Harrison impersonation, but like, right, mate, you're sort of speaking to you in your head. It's like, go over there and steal that guy's bag of barbecue crisps, and then while you're at it, just do him in the butt.
Mate.
Sorry, that's the crap Harrison impersonation.
But it's spot on.
I just imagine my 13-year-old friends hanging out, and all of a sudden I'm having gay sex while I'm trying to play a role-playing game because my sword has some sexual desires. Who wrote this thing?
Yeah, meanwhile your sword is shaped like a giant sexual organ. I mean, Christ almighty, was this written by 13-year-olds?
Maybe, I don't know. It's a Frenchman, so his name is Crow. He doesn't even have a real name. It's just Crow. That's his name.
Sounds like there's some erotic fantasy fiction. What store were you in that you bought this? What kind of back alley red light district were you in where you picked up this role playing game?
From like a crow man. He's like, yeah, I'm the crow. Do you want to buy an RPG?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really popular game in France too. So I mean, I don't know.
Or so he said.
No, it's true. And yeah, it sold a lot of copies because of the cover. I think Frazetta was helped quite a bit there. But yeah, I mean, besides that, it's just a world bathed in violence and warfare. So you stand out as a wielder of a god weapon, and these powers range from boosting your attributes to giving you to throwing fireballs, to throwing acid, to protecting you, to all kinds of things. So that can be handled just with the powers in Savage Worlds. I think even the superpowers companion might be helpful there, because some of those are permanent and some of those powers are just temporary. But how about with those weapons? How would you, because obviously in the game each of the desires has a rating, but wouldn't that be just hindrances for you guys that you would deal with this for the personality of the weapon? Or something else?
They have a desire for, you were saying, prestige, wealth, naughty adult cuddle times violence and reputation, right?
Yeah.
And does it have like a minus or a plus rating or something like this?
Exactly. Each character has a rating for these desires, and then the weapon adds modifiers, so a +2 to a -2 for each, which helps guide you how you role play, basically.
Yeah, I guess that would be a nice simple way of doing it, where you could just have you've got the prestige hindrance, or the or something like this, or the low prestige hindrance, or prestige edge, or low prestige hindrance, or something like this. It's a nice simple way of doing it. So you walk into a town, people who know who you are for the right or wrong reasons. It's a simple way of doing it. Just like a quick mod.
What about having your weapon as an ally in Savage Worlds? so that it has its own stats and stuff like that. And then give it the hindrances, and anytime something like that comes up, you have to you get the hindrances that are associated with your ally sword as well.
That's what I was thinking. I like that.
That's a great idea.
And then, like I said, the lunar phases cycles actually influence that. So, I mean, they have a chart with every day which cycle is, waning and all that. But I think that'd be too complicated. Maybe just a chart, a table with you draw a card and tells you that this month, while all weapons fill, it's the month of war, so every weapon wants to shed blood, and then there's the month of cuddling, and then all the weapons wants to cuddle, and that type of thing, which would kind of give a hindrance to everybody. I don't know. It seems too granular right now. Maybe listeners have a good idea of what to do, but that's the part I kind of struggle with, where I want to keep it as simple as possible. But
I think that because then you would need to keep taking hindrances and edges away from characters, and that would kind of be annoying. I think maybe it would just need to be something that maybe the DM keeps track of. But then again, that's kind of annoying. Maybe you could just abstract that stuff out and just it be something you keep track of. But then yeah, I guess I don't know. Maybe that. Maybe this doesn't work. I don't know.
Honestly, I don't think it's too much of a hassle to keep track of one additional global modifier that's determined by a card draw at the beginning of a session or an adventure. You can just, if you really have that much trouble remembering something like that, what you can do is just write it on a big index card or something and place it in the middle of the table.
No,
so it's just there as a reminder.
The Lunar Phases thing is easy, but then additionally with all the different things for each person's sword, giving them those different trackers as well, then you need to have each character track those. Then that's fine, but then it's just how you go about doing that is kind of annoying. Do you keep giving them a different edge or hindrance, or add a new box on this character sheet with these things to track, and then you're just basically going back to the old game.
Yeah.
So is this like a fantasy setting? Is that
it's low fantasy. Sword and sorcery is low fantasy. Think Conan, but in this case it's more like Elric, because Elric's got a demon sword in there, so it's kind of a knockoff of Elric with his demon sword, but instead it's a god weapon. So yeah, it's fantasy. Like I said, the tech level is like plate armor and crossbow is pretty much at the top of and the siege weapons is at the top of the techno.
So essentially you've got, like, say, I'm going to set the scene here, and this is kind of why I have a hard time with this. So you're playing a bunch of a group or a band of adventurers or whatever, and one of you has it, or everybody has god weapons? They all have
Everybody has one, yeah.
Okay, but that's what makes you stand out and sort of be like a cut above everybody else, because you have these god weapons.
A wild card.
Yeah, a wild card. So it makes you a wild card, essentially. So on the other side of the valley, there's a band of roving gypsies, let's just say. They've been terrorizing the neighborhood, and you've been sent off to go, eliminate, destroy, or control this band of roving gypsies. You want to stop them from terrorizing all the towns. And you crest the hill, you come down into this valley, you track them down, you play your adventure, and then all of a sudden you find this little band of roving gypsies, and you're about to confront the gypsy leader. Out comes this long, raven-haired, voluptuous, sexy lady, and all of a sudden your sword goes, and you can no longer kill her. You're in this big contest with your sword over whether or not you should take her out or have sex with her. And it's like, this is where the game just fucking falls apart.
Well, does it? Or maybe, your mission was to kill them all, but what if your god weapon is attracted to the leader of those gypsies, and now the the objectives change. They just change. And now whoever paid you to get rid of these people, now they're your enemy or you're their enemy. And now you form an alliance with those gypsies instead because that's what your god weapon wants. You know what I mean?
Just test of wills? You versus determine what happens?
Yeah. So I mean, like Harrison said, it could just be a spirit versus spirit. Your weapon would have a spirit score. You roll, whoever rolls the highest wins that contest, or do it more in depth, like the Dominion rules in Deadlands, where when you're harrowed and the Manitou's trying to get control of you, you could use that too. Or you as a player could say, I'll let my weapon take control because I kind of like where this is going.
I think it's quite fun. And also you could bear in mind that your god weapon is kind of a hindrance, because the idea behind it is that if your god weapon goes against your character and what your character believes, well, that's a hindrance. So you could put that in there. The differing beliefs between you and what your god weapon is, that's a hindrance. So if you say, fuck it, I'm going to go along with what my god weapon is saying, then, well, you're playing your hindrance. So that's a Benny.
Yeah, I like that aspect. Like when you create your character, being a wielder is a hindrance.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. I mean, for what I had in mind, I mean, like I said, the rest can all be handled with just the rules, but it's just these parts where I wanted to know what you guys would think.
I think those bits are the bits where we were kind of struggling to get it to work. I think the only part I struggle with is tracking those 5 different things: prestige, wealth, naughty cuddles, violence, and reputation. But I would like to give this a try in Savage Worlds and see how it works. I certainly don't think this appeals to me in any way, shape, or form. But I would still like to give it a try.
Liar. You would love it.
No, the thing about the wang bats, like wielding a wang bat that tells you what to do, I think that's a good laugh. But your weapon constantly being, don't do that. No, I don't know about that, but the fact that you can have dong swords, I like that.
Yeah, I thought you guys would get a kick out of that. So yeah, next.
Right, so I recently did a conversion of an old 4th edition adventure. Now, this sort of is quite in keeping with what we're doing here, because obviously I'm never going to go back and play 4th edition. It did a lot of stuff I actually really liked, believe it or not. Come at me, bro. But D&D 4th edition, yeah, a lot of people didn't like it, and there were some things I did like about it. However, my group has moved on quite a lot, and we, play more Savage Worlds and things like this nowadays than we do that kind of stuff. So, a while back, there was an adventure posted on Penny Arcade, that webcomic that was like, it was just a blog post essentially. Usually they do these weekly blog posts that one of the guys, Jerry, does on there. However, one week he was absent, so the other guy, Mike, did a blog post about how he had to run an adventure for all the wives of the people that worked on that website. And he just whacked his notes on there. It was kind of like not that well put together. It was as well as he could do in a short amount of time and stuff like this, and he just whacked it on there, and I remember it really well, and I was like, oh, that's such a good adventure. I wish I could play it one day, but I don't play 4th edition, so whatever. Anyway, this adventure came out around the time that sort of the Twilight craze was going on, and it was all about this girl that goes missing, and she's gone to see this play about vampires, and she wants to meet the lead actor, and the play is all about this. But the play is basically Twilight. It's literally Twilight, and it's about a girl that falls in love with a vampire. And it turns out, obviously the players don't know this immediately, but it turns out that the stage crew for the play has been infiltrated by real vampires, and whenever people go backstage to meet the crew, they're nicking the girls, the young teenagers, and feeding on them basically. and this is what's happened to the girl that's gone missing. So in come the players and stuff like this. So in come the players, and they're talking to the girl's mum who's gone missing, and now they're having to investigate where the girl's gone and stuff like this, and they figure out, they go to her room, investigate, find a poster for this play, figure out that she's gone missing, and go and investigate. And that's essentially the thing. And the name of it is, let me just find it for you, it's called Dusk, but it's got a really long name. It's called Dusk, being an account of dangers irresistible, where love's eternal terrible price is a life damned and eternal. Anyway, so I really wanted to convert this adventure to Savage Worlds and make it kind of droppable into any fantasy setting, as opposed to just being for 4th edition. So I really didn't need to do a lot to convert this to being used to Savage Worlds, except for where there were skill tests and stuff like this. I just changed it over to working with Savage Worlds. So, for example, when they go up to the room to look around and investigate Tess's room, so Tess is the girl that goes missing, it says you need to get a DC 10 higher check to search behind her mirror to find the flyer for the play that her mum said she couldn't go to. Instead, I just put, with a successful notice check -2, they can find the flyer for the play and things like this. However, there are several encounters in here. Now, the way in 4th edition it was always laid out, it would say encounter 1, and it would say 2 direwolves +1 per player, things like this. And then it would have all the monsters listed at that end, whereas I laid this out in the way that it would actually be in Savage Worlds, and put the monsters where the encounter actually is. And then I went through my books and found appropriate monsters and just slotted them right in there, and then altered them to be what I felt was an appropriate power level and changed things around. So I know there's probably direwolves in some book somewhere, but I couldn't be bothered to look properly because I'm lazy. So what I ended up doing was I ended up taking the stats for there's an encounter basically when they get to the play, and they start interviewing all the different people that work in the play, all the actors and stuff like this. Some direwolves jump out and start attacking them. And so what I did is I went to the Solomon Kane book, because that's the campaign that we're playing at the moment. Took the stats for a Hellhound and just altered that and basically took out a lot of their attacks. And so they've got things like go for the throat. If a direwolf gets a raise on its attack roll, it strikes the foe's least armored location. Things like this. And I think that's pretty. And then other than that, all the stats are pretty accurate for a direwolf.
Yeah, that's basically how it is too. I think you can find them in the Fantasy Companion, the direwolves. So it's basically like that, with I think a toughness of 6 or 7 or something like that.
Well, yeah, these are these have got toughness 7, so yeah, they're probably fairly similar. Well, I don't own the Fantasy Companion, so that'll be why. Anyway, there's a really cool bit in this adventure where they essentially get to a point where they will most likely encounter the Stagehands, and the Stagehands are like really pale. They're really they're quite obviously vampires. Like any idiot wouldn't realise. Like they meet all of the actors, and all of the actors in the play are kind of like really putting it on. They're proper like method actors, and they're like pretending to be vampires and things like this, and they're just like, oh, what it means to be a vampire, and they're like quite obviously putting it on. Whereas when they meet the stagehands are obviously real vampires and things like this, and with notice rolls and things like this, they'll notice that they're vampires. And it gets to a point where when they confront them, they'll cast a big spell on the audience. And what I did is this will be a puppet spell, but it's like basically times a million, so I just abstracted that out. But there's a point in the original adventure where they had these 2 girls attack the party and had them as these sort of dark servants. And the way they had done it in the original adventure was that the people in the audience had maces, but they just said, just pretend they're handbags kind of thing. Whereas in Savage Worlds, you don't need to do that. You can just have it as a small improvised weapon, And then the audience members also had like some sort of vampiric powers as well. They had Spectral Scream, which I think was a 4th edition spell or something like this. But the way I tracked it, the way I did it was I just had it as it's a burst power. So I just statted up some just regular people, gave them burst power, and so they can use the Spectral Scream power on the party. And then they also have the big mouth hindrance, so they also just start blabbing and saying, "Why did you ruin our play?" and all of this stuff at the party. So they're just screaming at them using the Spectral Scream power, and they will actually attack with handbags, because that's a thing you could do in Savage Worlds and just have the improvised weapon thing. So yeah, and they also have the Dirty Fighter, and there was a thing called Shadow Shift as well. So these people can shift 1 square after attacking, even if they've used their full pace, which is just a thing I added in there. I don't know if it's something you can already do in Savage Worlds, but it was something they could do in the original adventure module, so it was just something that I had in there. But yeah, they have either a purse or a handbag, and that's just a small improvised weapon. Yeah, and that's pretty much it, aside from the one last encounter that you get into is kind of a chase scene. However, in the one final thing that I did was, instead of using the original chase rules, I wanted this to be a combat encounter, because in the original version, it had these really cool rules where you were standing on top of these wagons, and the ones that were controlled by the vampires who were trying to get away from you were kind of controlled telepathically, whereas the ones that were controlled by the players had to literally be driven. Instead of using the chase rules, what I've done is I've tried to mimic what they did. So they said that you had to use, I don't know, your horse riding skill or whatever. But in here, you can use a driving check. The driver on their turn can use a driving check to either move the horses up 2 squares, backwards 3 squares, or left and right 2 squares. And then everyone else is standing on the top of it and fighting on their turn. So you can try to move the wagon closer or less close. And what I did is I've provided advice in here to cut out templates for wagons and put those on a battle map, and then have this fight go on. And yeah, it provides all the rules of how to do that.
So basically, it could have been handled with the chase rules, because with the chase rules you can close in and attack melee, but just because you don't like the chase rules, you decided to be more like vehicle combat type of
pretty
battle.
much. I mean, a lot of people don't, and a lot of people don't like them. So yeah, pretty much I included these much easier, much more enjoyable ones at the end that kind of mimicked the original. And I've run this adventure, and it was awesome. And it had people basically jumping around on the top of the wagons as they were pelting it through the woods. And you've got 3 vampires, and then the vampire stage manager on the top of the other one. Now, the thing about this is I took the vampires, again, from the Solomon Kane book, and they are tough as nails. So they can only be damaged by holy damage or whatever, or a stake through the heart. So bear that in mind when you're playing this. But essentially, it was a very, very easy thing to do. All I really did was, whenever I saw a skill check come up in this original adventure, I switched it out for the Savage Worlds one. And I also switched out any monsters for monsters from Savage Worlds and altered them to fit the original flavour of the adventure. Another thing I did, as I said, I wanted this to be usable for any fantasy campaign, so I actually altered a lot of the text as well. First of all, because it was quite messy, because obviously the guy typed it up in a hurry, but I also took out any D&D specific mentions. So a lot of things were like, he's obviously used a staff of this to conceal his appearance and things like this. So I took mentions of that out and just made it more general. So this can pretty much be put into any campaign. We played this in Solomon Kane. You could play this in a D&D, like a Shinetar game. You could put this into a 50 Fathoms campaign if you wanted to. It could fit in pretty much any fantasy campaign easily. So I've altered a lot of the text in here. I also took out any swear words in here as well, because there was a lot of... so anything stronger than a bloody is pretty much been taken out. So yeah, that's pretty much all I did. So I made it Savage Worlds friendly. But the thing about it is I know it sounds dumb because it's centered around a Twilight play, but the thing about it is that if you want to have a laugh at the premise and then play what is actually a really, really cool adventure, you'll get a very good kick out of this, and it's a very good adventure. I'm not saying because of me, but because of the original guy that wrote it. It's a very, very fun adventure because after the investigation, the final scene where you're jumping around on the top of the wagons, and it does provide some advice as well, because obviously I know what a lot of people are thinking, because you can just fall off the back and then that's it, game over. But it does say that you can allow people to, if you want to be kind, you can allow people to spend a penny to just have their foot get caught up on some rope and be dragging along the back of the cart when they fall off. So there's little things like that. But I've just basically changed everything over to Savage Worlds rules by just going through it with a fine-tooth comb and then also just updated a lot of the text as well to make it a bit easier to read and a bit more general, so you can drop it into any campaign.
Thanks for including us.
No, but it was the thing is, it was already done. I didn't really have anything to say. I mean, that's just it. It was very different to your one, but it was just like my adventure was already done when I brought it here, really. But that was basically it.
I know, I'm just teasing.
So basically, you absolutely failed the assignment on purpose.
Pretty much. Yes, but that is actually available to download. It's got the original artwork in there, and there was a guy on Reddit as well that provided a handout. I got his permission to put it in the document as well. So there's a little handout in there that you can print off as well. So when they discover your PCs discover the little handout behind Tess's mirror in her room, the poster for the play, you can actually print it out and give it to your players, which is pretty cool.
That's
nice. Cool.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes so people can look at it themselves. At least with yours, it's already done, so people can actually use it. Mine is just an idea that I'll probably never finish.
Yeah,
I haven't even started, and probably never will. So
nice. And next up, we got Manuel. You're coming in hard. Vampire the Masquerade.
So at least as far as Eric told me, the premise was to find something on your bookshelf that you no longer using, but you would like to play again, and then just see how you would do that in Savage Worlds. So I had a look at my bookshelf, and there were basically 3 things on that bookshelf. One is a whole ton of Savage Worlds books. The other is a whole ton of Shadowrun books, which I have done to death on this podcast. And the third one are original books of the World of Darkness series, which include Vampire the Masquerade and Werewolf the Apocalypse, I believe it is, and Mage the Ascension. And those I started with the classic Vampire the Masquerade. So I looked at that and thought about how would I do a Vampire the Masquerade game in Savage Worlds. And the easy and short answer is you take the core rulebook and you take the Superpowers companion and you mix them together and you add some certain special home-cooked setting rules, and then you're basically good to go. Because at the bottom of it, Vampire the Masquerade is like, it's a game about beings with superpowers. So that answer was quite easy to get to just determine the power level of your vampires with how many points they get. Then you just determine which powers are appropriate for which clan you want to take, and it's not that hard to translate the powers of certain clans to powers you find in the Superpowers companion. So that is basically the most easy part to adapt from Vampire the Masquerade.
That's an interesting angle, because one would think of going to the horror companion first, because they've got all these. Well, they got the vampire race, but then again, as was pointed out, those races aren't really well balanced, like the werewolf and the zombie and vampire.
Yeah, for one, they are not that well balanced, but also they don't offer any kind of special progression as you level up. It's just like
no edges, right? Yeah.
They need to do they need to do an angst companion.
Well, I'm going to get to that. So basically, the horror companion is like, yeah, here you are. You're now playing a vampire, but everything else stays absolutely the same. So for a bit more of that power progression, which is a big part of Vampire the Masquerade, yeah, the Superpowers Companion would absolutely be my go-to book for that. And, well, you'd have to do some form of balancing or regulation and say, well, you're going to start out with, obviously, you're going to use the rule where you start out with like 5 or 10 power points, and then you can increase those as you advance through the upper ranks. But of those 10 points, you can only spend like 4 points on a single power to just stop somebody from putting all of his 10 or 15 points or whatever into the attack power and then just basically murder everything in game without anybody having a chance to actually stop him at the same
time. How is that different? Excuse me, how is that different from the rule already in the book that says you can't spend more than, well, I guess I just answered my question. Usually you can't spend more than half your points on one power. So you'd put a cap to 5 or 10 instead, which is basically the same if you start with 10 power points, right?
You are absolutely right. I totally forgot that was already in there.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
I mean, that super speed for celerity and... Yeah, that type of thing. What about the feeding? What about feeding?
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting point. So how you could tackle that is basically determined by how you want to run the game. If you want to run it like a kind of superpowers themed game where everybody is not Iron Man and Spider-Man, but vampires, you could go the very easy route and just make it the habit hindrance and have that as a requirement for every character that's a vampire. You're playing a vampire, bam, you have the major hindrance habit. You have to drink blood, otherwise you generate fatigue, which can kill you in the end.
What if you prefer a flan?
With what?
What if you prefer a flan?
A what?
Like a flan?
What's a flan?
Like a dessert. Sorry, carry on.
Oh my god. That was terrible.
Don't worry, I'll cut it out. It's fine.
I think Richard Woolcock on this site with Savage Undead as a mechanic for feeding, but then again, I think he uses an arcane background where to recover your power points you have to feed, but
that was
different.
That was actually my first idea to do it something like the arcane background superpowers from the core book, where you can only regenerate those power points by feeding. But the problem is that's not really how the arcane backgrounds work. You would be basically feeding constantly or never getting to use your powers, which would be boring. And also the powers in the core rulebook, they just don't offer the variety you would need to translate all the available powers from Vampire the Masquerade. So that's why in the end I decided on going with the Superpowers Companion, or I decided that I would go with the Superpowers Companion, as I haven't actually done that. So the way
I like the habit. I like using habit major feeding.
If you want to go into a bit more detailed play about feeding and make blood even more important, what you could do is just use a setting rule, as I have done in the past with and I'm mentioning it again with Savage Shadowrun 2nd edition. You could just use a setting rule that gives you a blood pool of like half of your vigor and have certain triggers that make you spend that blood. Like, I don't know, using that would probably be too much bookkeeping. You could just use that as a blood pool and be like, you lose 1 point of blood every day, bam, and then that would mean you have to go out hunt and feed every few days, and maybe insert some powers that actually modify the blood pool with some edges, some hindrances. That would be just instead of the hindrance. In my opinion, the hindrance would be the way to go, as it is the way to do it with least amount of bookkeeping. but it really forces the players to look after blood without it generating a lot of bookkeeping and impacting all the fun parts of the game.
Well, plus there's something with the blood, if I remember, because I played Vampire, but that was, over 5 years ago. But I seem to recall there was something where you could spend some of your blood pool to regenerate damage. Now, how would you handle that? Would that be like a bonus to soak rolls and that type of thing? Or just a power that you'd have to choose?
Pretty much neither. I would basically go for something like a setting rule where you can spend a blood point to do a natural healing roll.
So just a Benny at any time. The blood points would be your bennies, basically.
I don't believe you can't spend a Benny any time to gain a natural healing roll. Natural healing is the healing that occurs every 5 days in game. So just you can spend a blood point and take one out of turn, and that's about it.
So you would have both bennies and blood points.
Yeah.
If you're using the Savage Worlds superhero companion to do this, could you, if you wanted to, I'm not saying, now don't get angry about this, could you have Iron Man in there as well?
Technically, yes, and that wouldn't even... Well, it would break the Vampire the Masquerade law, of course. But if you recall, in the Marvel universe, vampires exist. There's a hero based on them. His name is Blade, and he is awesome and one of my favorite Marvel superheroes. And so you could absolutely play a vampire game where Iron Man shows up. Okay,
2 things. First of all, I think that people are a bit too precious about the Vampire the Masquerade lore. If your characters come in, they're there to break it, right? They're there to do different stuff to it. But second of all, it's pronounced Blade. It's like Sade. But yes, you're absolutely right. So what you could do is you could have 4 characters named Blade 1, Blade 2, Blade 3, because that's why the films are called that. They're all different guys. And then you have Iron Man as the 4th player if you've got 4 players at your table.
Are you going to run that for us?
No, because it's Manuel's idea. He has to run it. Blade and Iron Man. Well, I think it sounds great. I think this is the best idea we've had in this entire podcast. Because Dusk wasn't even my idea. Bloodlust has got dong swords, but Manuel's is Iron Man and Blade. The Masquerade.
I think
Iron Man and Blade, the Masquerade.
No. Swords win all the time. It's automatic win.
What is dong swords?
Yes.
Okay.
Why not put them all together?
You know what? Now we're talking.
You know, the funny thing in Vampire the Masquerade is there's a clan called I have no idea how the bloody hell they are pronounced in English. I'm going with the pronunciation from the video games. So they are the clan Tsumitsi, and they can actually have a power called flesh form. So they could absolutely build a sword out of bone and flesh and cover it with penises.
There you go.
Manuel, why you got to bring this down? This is a very mature podcast up until that point. You're always doing this.
I was just thinking, like, if your sword tip was the tip, then your handle would be where, like, the sword balls would be. And every time you went to fight somebody, you would just have sword balls on your hand.
Sword balls.
That's only a problem if there's too much ball sweat, because then it would get slippery and you would lose the sword.
It's funny that we were talking about getting raises earlier. I do feel like all of us should be being paid for this now. Because it's when talk of sword balls comes up, I'm starting to think maybe we should be compensated for our time.
Technically, we have Patreons.
Yeah.
I just find it funny that we want to talk more about sword balls than anything else because it's just so fun.
The thing about it is, I know that a lot of people say that the Vampire the Masquerade system isn't one of the best out there and stuff like that. But I guess people hate systems that flow really well and work really decently. But very good ideas there, Manuel. I'm really sorry, but we do have to move on because we are running slightly long. But I think you did a very good job, and I think you've put me and Eric to shame. So screw you, Gary. You're up next. You bringing something kind of interesting here. What's up, man?
A new game. A new RPG?
This new strange RPG that's come out of nowhere. It's taken the world by storm. What are you bringing, man?
No, I didn't bring anything new. I brought something old, is what I actually did. Speaking of the 90s, man, this bad boy's from 1992, Dungeon Magazine. In fact, you know there's still an active Twitter account, Dungeon Magazine? You can follow this guy, and he'll bring up stuff about the old Dungeon magazines, which I think is pretty fascinating. Being that I'm a grown-ass man with a family, I don't have a lot of time to play. And back in the day, I was kind of doing the same thing, because as soon as I got out of school, I went and got me a job. So one-shots are kind of my deal. And that is why I love Dungeon Magazine so much. You know, even in this day and age, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but when's the last time you guys ran a campaign? That's my question to you right now. Have you run a campaign in the last little while that went for a year?
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't lie to me.
I'm running the Rippers campaign at this moment, and I'm playing in the Sundered Skies campaigns. We've been playing for 2 years now.
No, but I get you though. A lot of people have that problem. It's a common thing. A lot of people don't run long campaigns nowadays because time is very hard to come by. I'm lucky. A lot.
Thinking. Yeah, I'm just thinking you guys got too much free time on your hands. That's what I'm thinking.
Totally.
Spoiled. So, the old Dungeon Magazine, episode 37, 1992, September, October, has a module in it that, surprisingly, when I opened it up, is written by Chris Perkins, which I thought was actually pretty cool, because everybody sort of knows who he is of D&D fame. And this Dungeon Magazine is packed with different adventures from different levels, and this is one called A Wizard's Fate. And I really liked it back in the day. It sort of incorporates all of the elements, which is one of the things that I like about Savage Worlds. Is Savage Worlds has certain things like dramatic tasks where you can roll in and you could throw this in your game and do some cool stuff with it. This adventure called Wizard's Fate sort of isn't really, it's like one giant dramatic task, and it incorporates a bunch of things. You've got a great story, you've got some investigation, you've got some dungeon dwelling, puzzles that you have to actually figure out, and traps as well. And it all ends with the great entrance into a treasure room of floating spheres, which is pretty cool. So really easy to convert. You could probably have this done in 5 minutes. All you got to do is bust out your Savage Worlds core book, go to the bestiary in the back where you'll find Direwolf, by the way.
Uh-oh. Oh, that's a shame.
And if not, you can look in your fantasy companion, and you can find a lot of these things in here, like imps. I'm sure there's imps somewhere. I'm sure there's bugbears. I'm sure there's giant centipedes. And what else we got? We got skeletons. So there really is nothing to do other than just insert these where they are appropriate inside the game. Traps. You got multiple options for traps. You can just play the trap like you normally would, where you're going to make an agility check, and if you succeed, well, obviously the trap doesn't work. Or you could do the cool shit that Savage Worlds brings into the role-playing genre, which is like dramatic task. But I wouldn't actually, probably what I would just do is agility trick it. That would be the way to go. Simple, go through the rooms, proceed through the adventure, and then here's where this gets interesting. As you're progressing throughout the dungeon, you find different keys. And then in order to get into the treasure room, you have to use a specific key for a specific door. And there's clues that I'm not going to tell you. You'll have to read the adventure. But if you insert the wrong key in the wrong door, bad things going to happen. Bad things going to happen, as Harrison would say.
That's perfect. You sound exactly like me, man.
I'm getting better, right? I'm practicing it. So when you come to these 3 circular doors that are either you're either going to succeed or you're going to fail in 2 different ways depending on which key that you put into it. Now there's 3 doors, 3 keys. They lead to the sweet ass treasure room at the end. This is where I would insert dramatic task. Why, you ask? Because Dramatic Task has a cool feature. I'm closing my book up now, by the way, that says if you fail a dramatic task, you die. Or at least it says the worst possible scenario comes out, which I think is fantastic. So I would just tell my players that this is how it's going down. You got 3 keys, 5 doors. Maybe give them some chance of success. Maybe an int roll to figure out which one goes, or smarts check or something like that. See, I'm even reverting back to my D&D smarts check to maybe help them out. But yeah, I would run a dramatic task, and if they succeed, they get into the treasure room. Bada bing, bada boom. Venture over. We're done.
So with the dramatic task, is that definitely right that it says in the Savage Worlds core, fail a dramatic task, you die? So let's say, for instance, the dramatic task is to change a tire on a car before somebody gets back, or to steal the hubcaps off a car before the person gets back. Do you definitely die?
Let me tell you, I just had it opened, and I'm surprised that you actually asked me.
Because I think I might play it that way from now on. No matter what the dramatic task is, if they fail, they die. End of story.
Here's the thing.
Is it dramatic if you're just changing a tire?
Yeah, I think
it's
so.
not dramatic.
No, it is. If, let's say, for example, the person's coming back and they see you, right? The person's looking at you and they see you stealing their hubcap and they're legging it after you. And now you've got to do it quickly. Okay, that's dramatic. And if you don't do it, you die. Yeah. You get hit by lightning for no reason. That's dramatic. If that's not dramatic, I don't know what is. Very well done, everyone. I think we gave some solid advice there with 4 different settings. So we had Dong Swords, we had Vampire Love, we had Blade and Sade the Masquerade, and then we had the Wizard's Farte. So I think overall some very good advice. So well done, everyone. Give yourselves a good pat on the back.
No.
Yo, motherfuckers, you all best back up. I always got a gun, I always come strap up. This ain't a game of pool, it ain't no time for no rack up. It's the motherfucking time for the motherfucking wrap up. Anyone who disagrees will get smack up. See me back in school when I shouldn't have learned to add up. I found a gun on the floor, instead I picked that up. Anyway, sorry, I'm motherfucking back up. What I'm trying to say is it's time for the wrap up. Yeah, this one goes out to all the ladies and all the men out there. Everyone in the front row, grease up. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I hope you guys enjoyed the show, the listeners. Maybe they'll prompt you to look at your bookshelf and dismantle it, or just pick something old that you haven't looked at in a while and use it again. I just want to plug something here for our good friend, Richard Woolcock. His Blood and Bile mini game just came out recently. So if you remember Richard, Saga of the Goblin Horde, and now he's published with his own company, his own publishing company, and so go check it out. I'll have a link for that in the show notes. Go throw him a few bucks, even if you won't play that game, maybe to tell him that you appreciate Saga of the Goblin Horde. So,
you know how
give him money.
Everybody in the Savage World community kind of has like the Savage so and so, or the Savage this, or the Savage. Does Richard Woolcock have one? No.
I dare not come up with one, because I'm sure you're thinking of something right now.
He should just be called the Savage Mac Daddy, because he's just got awesome stuff all the time. The guy, he's just like amazeballs. The guy's always pumping out cool stuff.
Okay. Yep. All right. Well, I thought you were going to say something vulgar. I'm pleasantly surprised. But yes, Richard Woolcock, he's good, man.
Same here. Yeah.
I was thinking when you said you wanted to plug something, I was going to ask you if you needed a dong sword to help with that.
Well done. Brilliant. All right. How about some contact info?
Gary?
Well, you can email us at thewilddie@gmail.com. Get a hold of us over at the Wild Die Podcast on Google+. Check us out. We're under the Nerds International community. On Twitter, we are at the Wild Die. And throw us a shekel or two so that we can pay Harrison to keep making your stupid frickin' Goblin songs over at patreon.com/the Wild Die. Insert Patreon jingle here.
2, 3. Sean Richard, yeah! Who's the next guy? Conrad Erasmus, Sovia, Rob Tao, Peter Adams, John Peterson, Manuel Sands, Jason Connolly, Gubu, or Gus Bus. Which one is it? Who cares? Because the next one is Gil Dashard, Andy Hall, Christopher Gray, Tony Asmodeus, Owen Lee, David. It just says David. Who cares? James Clark, Henry Chalmers, David. There's another one. Eli Kurtz, Matthew J. Hanson, Murder Hobo, John Steve, Pure Mongol. And of course the best. He's better than the rest. His name is Bubbles.
All right, so this is Eric. This is Eric saying, grab your sword by the balls.
Oh my god.
And this is Harrison saying, grapple the skies.
And this is Manuel saying absolutely nothing witty today because I can't think of anything after all the dong swords.
Fantastic. All right. I hope you enjoyed the show, everybody. This is Gary saying keep your pants on, keep it fun. Thanks, everyone. We're out.
The Wild Die Podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by Pinnacle Entertainment Group or official Pinnacle licensees. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of the respected owners. All music and artwork is used with permission of Pinnacle Entertainment Group. All items are used under fair use and educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Wild Die Podcast.